There's a reason there's a quarterback battle between Drew Allar and Beau Pribula. It's because the coaches really believe in these guys, and there's no timeline to solve this just yet.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, you are Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. I am Zach Seyko. I'm your host of the show. Thanks for joining me on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Let me know in the comments section, wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube, how much you believe in this quarterback room, because the coaches certainly do. We're going to talk about that to open up the show. Plus, Smith Vilbert out for the season. Penn State's defensive end room, what does it look like? And more takeaways, seeing them in practice for the second time and really getting an idea of how this offense and defense is really going to take shape. But the quarterbacks are the most important part, okay? Center gets the football to the quarterback. We all know this. This is the name of the game in college and in pro, that you need a great quarterback to succeed at each level. And Penn State's coaches really do believe in what they're doing with the quarterback battle between Drew Allar, Beau Pribula, Jackson Smolik. All these guys are talented in their own right. Allar and Pribula have a year of experience on Smolik, but it got pretty interesting where the discussion went between James Franklin, Mike Yurcich, and others. Drew has the advantage in this quarterback battle, okay? We know that. Drew Allar does, because there was an effort to get him into games last year, and he is the five-star quarterback that is supposed to take over here. So there's a quarterback battle with no timeline. There's no timeline here for when they're going to solve this, and I think that is a good thing. That means that the coaches really want to work through this, see how they progress, and ultimately make the best decision. I'm still a firm believer that it's going to be Drew Allar, but they like Beau Pribula a lot, and that's why there's a quarterback battle, okay? It's not about the fact that they trust Drew Allar. They think that he's a great quarterback and has all the potential in the world. It's the fact that the coaches like Beau Pribula, the players like Beau Pribula a lot, okay? I mean, there's plenty of qualities to like about Beau. He is going to see the field. It's just a matter of if he will be quarterback one or quarterback two. So Beau's going to see the field at some point in time. And don't discredit Jackson Smolik. Jackson is the first-year player. He's a true freshman. He's most likely going to redshirt. You really have quite the roller coaster of a season if Jackson Smolik sees the field this year in a more regular capacity. I could see him possibly getting in late into games to get him some experience, but they might want to preserve that redshirt. But he is the third quarterback on this roster. And the coaches, Mike Yurcich in particular, actually praised him and said Jackson Smolik is the biggest surprise out of the quarterback room. So they like what they have in Allar. They like what they have in Pribula. Now Smolik just gives them a little more insurance, because I was in the boat of, and I'll still stand by it, right? They should have gone and gotten that veteran quarterback. And it's okay to say that. This is a young quarterback room. But Jackson Smolik, to be able to provide that extra bit of security, that if he ends up getting in the game at some point, let's hope not, because Allar and Pribula are really good, and you just don't. If they're not on the field, it's for a bad reason. We're not going to we're not going to speculate on what could happen here, right? Don't speak it into existence. But Jackson Smolik getting praise outright from Coach Yurcich, saying that, hey, he's been a big surprise. He's come a long way. This group as a whole is very businesslike. They're fierce competitors. That's directly from Coach Yurcich. He believes in all of these guys for different reasons. So Smolik's the third guy, but I like what the coaches had to say about him. Now back to Beau Pribula, because I talked to Coach Yurcich one-on-one about this. What can you do with somebody like Beau Pribula? Because James Franklin's the one that put us on the trail, that he set us off to this. When there were spring practices, opening press conference, Coach Franklin said, hey, Beau Pribula is good enough to get on the field, and we can get creative with him. He doesn't have to be quarterback one to get on the field. Tommy Stevens, Will Levis, those guys can run. Beau Pribula can run. So we might see some packages that are like the Lion package of old. I know that was a Joe Moorhead thing, but this is why I wanted to get Coach Yursich one-on-one and talk to him about this. I'll link that video in the description so that you can watch it for yourself. But Yursich pretty much not necessarily off the cuff, but a little more open about what he had to say in regards to what they want to do secretly with Pribula. And they said as an athletic quarterback, coach said as an athletic quarterback, he can do quite a number of things with his legs. And that just opens up another dimension of the offense. So Allar and Pribula could be on the field at the same time. They could bring in Pribula and bring Allar off and just run some of those wildcat plays that people have seen. And they've made, those have been big plays before, especially if the defense is not necessarily game planning for that. I could see Pribula coming in more down the stretch. This isn't something we're going to see at West Virginia against Delaware, right? This is going to be saved for games like Ohio State, Michigan. Those formations, those crazy, funky formations are going to come out for those types of games. So athletic quarterback Drew is as well, but that straight line speed, I'm going to give Beau Pribula the edge. There's no doubt about it that Pribula, as far as a faster quarterback, that's what he is when compared to Allar. But Allar has the bigger arm. He has more accuracy. He's got the bigger size. I think he has a better pocket presence, and he reads the field a lot better. That's ultimately what the coaches are looking for, is who is going to read the defense better, because Tommy Stevens at times looked like a better athlete than Trace McSorley. And I will continue to compare these two quarterback battles. But whoever has the best field vision, can read defenses, can process the changes, and basically be the coach's eyes on the field, that's going to give the edge. And I think Allar has that advantage over Beau Pribula. So Drew's still the guy. You don't make an effort like that to get him on the field in the offense that season. There was no effort to do that with Christian Bayer. There was no effort to do that with Beau Pribula. Penn State, James Franklin, Coach Yursich tipped their hand when they said Drew Allar is going to be the guy after Sean Clifford. So I don't think you put in all of that effort just to say, well, but Beau Pribula has worked his tail off to make this a quarterback competition, because this could easily be just a passing of the baton from Sean Clifford to Drew Allar. But again, on the outside looking in, it's hard to say that Allar is not the starter, even though there is a quarterback battle, just based on what we've seen so far, and that Allar hasn't gotten comfortable, okay? Part of the reason there's these quarterback battles is because of competition purely, and it brings out the best in everybody. Allar hasn't lost a step or slowed his progression. Pribula's gained plenty of ground, but not because Allar is taking a step back. That's just Pribula's development and how far that he has come as an individual. Allar is still on the right trajectory. As Locked On Nittany Lions. Now, the first one that we know of so far, that it's not good news, but we have to react to it and figure it out, talking about how Vilbert's injury impacts the defensive end room. They're going to be just fine. We'll talk about in just a second, but I want to thank our sponsor of today's episode, and that is Birddogs. Birddog shorts and pants are great for a variety of reasons, because they make you look good first. Birddogs makes you look good. It's simple as that. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer and through the thigh and leg, giving you that truly sculpted look. Birddog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of that stiff, restricting cotton. Birddogs fix the issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so that you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice that movement you need. Birddogs uses anti-sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. I got a couple of pairs of Birddog shorts myself. I couldn't resist, and I'll tell you what, they live up to the billing. They have my signature of approval. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege to get yourself a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's all you got to do. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. And Locked On Nittany Lions is your go-to podcast for happyvalleyinsider.com. Check them out for all the latest news and analysis regarding Penn State football, Penn State men's basketball, down in the Bahamas, all of that and so much more. happyvalleyinsider.com. Penn State rivals. Smith Vilbert out for the season with an injury, first reported by Audrey Snyder of The Athletic. Incredible writer, incredible reporting, and first one to break it. Smith Vilbert, it's devastating from the fact that we miss him. We say Penn State fans simply should miss Smith Vilbert, and because you don't want him to be a one-hit wonder, right? Outback Bowl, okay? There's guys opting out left and right, and he becomes the bright spot in that game. That was a loss to Arkansas, but 3 sacks, and then you're thinking, okay, 2022, he's going to take that step forward, and nothing ever materializes for him. We don't know ultimately what happened, but if this is an ongoing injury or something that's a really bad luck here, either he's not recovering well from whatever injury it is. I don't know. I don't have any speculation on what he's dealing with, or if these are separate injuries, separate occasions, that's just really bad luck. And you have to feel for the football player, for the person that Smith Vilbert is. You just want to see him back on the football field. So we haven't seen him since that early January Outback Bowl in 2022. It's going to be 2 full seasons. And then you hope that he comes back in 2024, especially stronger, better than ever, especially with Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac moving on to the NFL, right? Chop Robinson's going to declare, and Adisa Isaac could have went into the draft this year, decided to come back. So that's good for Penn State. But now it does make sense, because at first we heard James Franklin say, okay, the defensive end room they're 2.5 deep. We have 5 players that we feel really good about. We want a 6, but we're not quite 3 deep. And that was interesting, because then when it comes to mine, you use some logic here. Okay, Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, Deni Dennis Sutton, Zariah Fisher, Amin Vanover. Who's that 6th guy? Smith Vilbert, right? That's the assumption. And then you come to find out after that press conference that Smith Vilbert is not available for the season due to injury. We just don't know what it is, but that's the reporting. So he has potential. When he ultimately, hopefully, does come back and plays in 2024. As we saw, that was a good Arkansas builds its foundation on being able to run the football with big, nasty guys up front on that offensive line. And the fact that Smith Vilbert was able to get 3 sacks against an athletic quarterback in KJ Jefferson as well, mind you, and KJ Jefferson has the build. I'm not going to compare him as a player profile to Cam Newton, but that 6'6", 250 pounds, he can run through anybody. And Smith Vilbert got him to the ground 3 separate occasions. But bottom line here, the bottom line is Penn State's defensive line is going to be fine. And I hate to say that, but you do have to move forward with what you have, as unfortunate the situation is. Penn State's defensive line as a whole is going to be just fine. And there's that Franklin saying 2.5 deep at the defensive end room. So Smith Vilbert was supposed to be that 6th guy, and that's okay. But you still have your first 5. You have Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, Deni Dennis Sutton, Amin Vanover, and Zariah Fisher. Robinson and Isaac are going to be your starters. Deni Dennis Sutton, I think, is going to float. I think he's essentially a 1B in this case on both sides of the defensive line. Okay, he's going to play Chop Robinson's spot. He's going to play Adisa Isaac's spot. He's going to rotate back and forth between the strong side and the weak side defensive ends. That's how good he is. I think we could see him play in the middle if Penn State decides to go down to 3 on a 3rd down situation. Right? Let's theorize here. You have both those guys, Robinson and Isaac, on the outside, and then you can put Deni Dennis Sutton right in the middle. And I feel like that 3-man pass rush is going to be pretty good if you get all 3 of them at the same time. But this defensive end room is the best it's been in a long time. Despite losing Smith Vilbert and some good quality depth, you have a lot of star power here. All those guys can play good football. What I like about this is, okay, you're not really top heavy here. It's not like there's Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, and then there's a significant drop off, because you can have a lot of players that can play defensive end, and this goes for any position. But at the case of defensive end, for Penn State, they can allow these guys to not wear themselves down, because you don't have to keep Chop Robinson in for an overly significant amount of snaps. Same thing with Adisa Isaac. You don't have to keep working them and working them and working them until they're just too tired. Then when they get to the fourth quarter, because there's no depth behind them, and look what happens. Look what happens. Now these guys are either really sluggish, or worse, they get hurt because they're fatigued. And that's when it happens, right? Aside from other incidents, most players get hurt because they're worn down and they've been on the field for a little too many plays. So these guys can cycle in. And yes, Zariah Fisher is not the same defensive end as Chop Robinson, but I feel confident, I feel comfortable when Penn State has to rotate those guys in, that there's not going to be that much of a drop-off from the level of play from Robinson Isaac and Denai Dennis Sutton to Amin Vanover and Zariah Fisher. As far as who could replace Smith Vilbert at that sixth spot, Jake Wilson comes to mind, been in the program for a long time, was seen a lot during the blue and white games, so meaning that Penn State wants to see what they have in a guy like Jake Wilson, and he could emerge as another piece of the puzzle. But I think the depth is fine. I like the first five guys a lot with the defensive end room. And Denai Dennis Sutton, let me highlight him for just a moment again. I think Penn State's going to get creative with him. He's going to play on their left and the right side, like I mentioned. They could put him in the middle on 3 down linemen on a 3rd down, just because he's so big, so bulky. And I feel like just because of his size, he's almost positionless. And that's a good thing for Penn State. But Denai Dennis Sutton, he is my prime candidate to break out in 2023. Drew Allar's obvious. Singleton, Allen, they're going to take the next steps, but we know about them as far as guys who played in limited capacity a season ago that take the biggest leap forward. That is Denai Dennis Sutton, someone who played sparingly in 2022 and is going to launch to the moon when it comes to this season. I see double-digit sacks. I see someone you can't keep off the field because of that size, standing near him, right, walking by him doing a drill, and he's a mountain of a man. He's got a mountain of a personality. He's got that fiery spirit, and it's crazy. Right? It is crazy to see how much passion he has for the game of football, competing and wanting to best the opponent on every given play. He's got all the aspects of a future first-round pick and a future all Big Ten, potentially all America type of player. And I think it's all going to come together in 2023. We're not going to have to wait until next year. So the more the merrier for Penn State, right? If Chop Robinson or Adisa Isaac weren't in the fold, I feel very like I want Denai Dennis Sutton to start, but it's a good problem to have when you have all the good talent in the first group and then somebody waiting his turn in the second group, but could easily be a starter. He'd start a lot of other places. Let me just say that. I have no idea how you block him. I really don't. When I look at Denai Dennis Sutton and stand about 10 feet away from him, it's really tough to see. But Chop and Adisa already have all the talent in the world to go with these other 3 guys that are going to rotate in a lot. Don't discredit Zariah Fisher and Amin Vanover. Amin Vanover is really good because he's more of your traditional run defender. Zariah Fisher, I want to give him credit, a lot of credit, because he was someone who was supposed to miss the entire season last year because of his injury, worked his way back, kept working his tail off, and then came back and played and looked good. He looked good down the stretch at the end of the season. So someone who has that kind of drive to not say, well, let me take the time off and recover at my own natural pace. No, he put in the work, worked with the medical staff to get into a position where he could play for more than half of the season and looked good doing it. Now that he's fully healthy, I like this group of 5 a lot. And I hope that a younger guy is able to emerge. I don't see any freshmen doing it. They still have a long way to go because guys who are playing high school football, I don't think they're quite prepared. And that's why you redshirt a lot of these guys. Why I don't think they're prepared to go up against 320, 330-pound offensive tackles, to say the least. But defensive end room is going to be just fine. And then ultimately, one final takeaway, and it has to do with Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen. And that's what this final segment is going to be here, talking about those two and just how much better, how much more fun the offense is going to get with them. So let's jump into this final segment. Nicholas Singleton, Kaytron Allen, they were good a season ago, almost 2,000 yards rushing together, 24 touchdowns between the two of them. So the hype is there. Doak Walker award watch list recently, and rightfully so. Singleton, a consistent name brought up in the preseason Heisman conversation. I think you throw Kaytron Allar in there as well. If it wasn't for the two of them taking snaps away from one another, Allar could be the bell cow. Nicholas Singleton could be the bell cow. Okay. It's only because they split the reps that they don't get the Heisman recognition that both of them individually do deserve. And they look at them, well, their stats aren't as good. That's because they're splitting the reps, man. Okay. If they had all the carries, if they had that bulk of the workload, they would easily be, those numbers are Heisman numbers together. I know they did them separately, but those are Heisman numbers when you put them together. And we're not going to have to worry about them being separate on the field. We're going to see them a lot together on the field next season. There's not a lot outside of Smith Vilbert's injury, the quarterback room. This was one of the biggest takeaways, I would say, the two of them here. The passing game between Singleton and Allar. I wanted, when I was able to talk to Coach Yursich, I asked him, okay, Singleton, Allar, particularly Singleton, because Allar, we saw him a little more involved in the passing game than a Singleton, but the screen passes and everything else. And Singleton did drop a few passes here and there, but we know what kind of runner he is in the open field. And then, but I wanted to know where their catching ability was and who they are as wide receivers. Now you see it in practice, specific drills where Singleton's leading the way on timing routes with Drew Allar, with Beau Pribula. Same thing with Kaytron Allar, basically lining up on the boundary and running routes like they're a wide receiver. So I fully expect Singleton and Allar to line up at wide receiver at points in time. Now they can fit more of that comparison with that Reggie Bush, Lendell White, the tail from USC back in the 2000s. These guys can now live up to that standard of that real true thunder and lightning, because they're going to get really involved in the passing game. How do you stop that? How do you stop that? It's different when you go from a 5 receiver set and Singleton and Allar split out wide. But here's what happens when the defense is setting up its game plan and its play on, and let's just take a first down, for example. Maybe it's 1st and 10, Penn State just gets inside the red zone. You could use this on any down. You could use this for a 3rd and 5 situation. Okay. You do tip your hand that this is going to be most likely a pass play. I could see Allar on a quarterback draw, Beau Pribula on a quarterback draw in that running type of package. But say Singleton is at the hip of Drew Allar, Kaytron Allar, same thing. Boom. You're getting ready. You do your check with me on the sideline. And then Singleton motions out and goes out wide or goes into the slot. How do you defend that? How do you cover that? Your linebacker, who's not all that great in pass coverage, now has to go up against Singleton, who is much more reliable with his hands and already will beat you in a foot race right off the punch. That wrinkle of the offense is going to be very exciting and very beneficial for Penn State. Now, there's one other part of this too. Singleton and Allar already creating those mismatches in the pass game. Let's talk about another mismatch here. They are going to be on the field at the same time. Yeah, they constantly rotated in and out. Kevon Lee would come in periodically, right, when he was healthy and available on the football field. Those guys rotated individually. You didn't see them on the field as much. But this was a staple of Mike Yurcich's offense when it was coordinated at Oklahoma State. Justice Hill and Chuba Hubbard, who were there at Oklahoma State. This got interesting. Someone brought this up on Twitter, X, whatever. It was talking about Oklahoma State's offense with those two kinds of running backs, guys who were capable. They were so good that you couldn't keep them off the field one apiece. So why not bring them both onto the football field? So that formation where it is a split shotgun set, Singleton, Allar on either side of Allar, Pribula, whatever, right? Because since we don't have a winner for the quarterback battle, but you have Singleton and Allar, and that's why Trey Potts becomes that much more important because of the added depth. If you're going to have Singleton and Allar on the field at the same time, you can get really creative out of this formation. And when we're at practice, and this was something that was up on my Twitter profile, my X profile, right, is that Allar and Singleton were taking reps at the hip of Allar. It would be a fake handoff one way and then a swing pass the other way. All that misdirection, the defense, just imagine this. Allar gets the snap, fakes the handoff to Allar going to the left. Defense is flowing all that way. And Singleton leaks out into the flat, and it's a simple swing pass, and you got one of your fastest players in all of the Big Ten with open field, full head of steam, I really don't know how you defend these concepts. I don't. If Singleton and Allen become that much more reliable as pass catchers, you can use not one, but now both of them at the same time on the football field, create that misdirection, create just total confusion with a simple fake read option handoff. And those guys can block for each other to which way? How do you defend it? Because they're just Singleton, I think, gets the edge when we all look at running backs, but Allen, okay, it's fire and ice. You don't pick your poison, okay? Handoff goes to Singleton. Kaytron Allen's the lead blocker. Handoff goes to Allen. Nick Singleton is the lead blocker here. So I'm really excited for this Mike Yurcich-led offense and how far it's going to come with what they're able to do now that some of these younger players have matured so much and they have that much more experience after just that first season. So whoever said these guys couldn't be on the field at the same time, they're lying to you, but they're still going to get their breaks. Trey Potts coming in, again, makes this all that much better. Kevon Lee, you should have stuck around. You shouldn't have sold out, but Trey Potts, one man's trash is another man's treasure here, and Potts is going to see quite a bit of time because they are going to be able to run those double running back sets with Potts in the fold. And don't forget about that, the T backfield formation. We already saw a glimpse of what it's like to have Allen and Singleton at the same time. So now imagine that, and imagine it with tempo. Oklahoma State went really fast. They played really quickly in those years when they had both Hill and Chuba Hubbard in the fold. And now you get to do that with two better running backs at Penn State. It's as simple as that. So now coming up on the podcast, we're going to have an update on Jalen Harvey. Friday becomes a little more complicated. We're going to talk about that in a new episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. So become an everydayer, subscribe to the show on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, for all that much more Penn State football content.